Hey guys, for those of you that don't know me, I ended rank 68 in set 6, and I just wanted to make a quick video on my thoughts on the current meta and how I think you should be playing it. In this video, I'm mainly going to be talking about the SHIN board, since I think it's currently the strongest board you can play right now, but it's really difficult to get to it. I'll also briefly touch up on all the AD comps and how to flex around them, and all the reroll comps as well. So when you're playing AP, you generally should always try and play towards the SHIN capped board. The conditions to play this comp is that you usually need to be level 8 with at least 40 gold to roll, and you should be relatively healthy, like at least 50 HP, and you need good SHIN items. The reason why this works is that, if you guys remember in set 6, there were some units like Victor and Xayah, and if you gave them Archangels, as long as your front line is strong enough, they will eventually scale and one-shot their entire team. SHIN is basically the same thing as Victor and Xayah. A 1-star SHIN will eventually one-shot their entire team. This is probably the strongest comp in the game right now, and I know after I say this, I feel like a lot of you are going to try and hard force this comp in your next game and try to get some free LP. I'm telling you right now, if you try and force this comp, you're probably just going to go 8th. The issue with this comp is that it's actually pretty difficult to play because it's very hard to get to this point. You generally have to be extremely flexible on your roll down and then slowly, one by one, transition out your units to get to this board. If you roll down and only pick up the units in this picture, you're probably just going to have 1-star Ornn, 1-star Nico, 1-star Gnar, 1-star Yasuo. Your front line's going to get melted and your SHIN's going to die before it even casts. Remember that the most important part of this comp is having a good front line. The skill expression in this comp is actually just being able to get to this point and knowing how to salvage a top 4 if you miss. So here's a typical level 7 mage board that usually plays into SHIN. Let's say you get an SHIN here. I think a common mistake that a lot of players will make is to immediately take out the Rise for the SHIN. So even though SHIN is a way better unit than Rise is still stronger here because SHIN is heavily dependent on a front line. And usually when you make this switch, you're going to get a lot weaker because your Sylas and Illaoi is going to melt instantly. The trick to the SHIN transition is to transition out your units one by one until your front line is very well established, and then you could put in SHIN. So on your level 8 roll down, you want to look for a very good front line and a 1-star SHIN to stabilize you. So let's say you find an Ornn, right? Currently you have an 8th slot, so you just slot in the Ornn. And let's say you get a 2-star Hecarim. Although Hecarim isn't in your final SHIN board, it's still a very good front line, so you definitely want to slot that in somehow. And you want to think to yourself, okay, what is the weakest link in my board so I could slot in Hecarim? And in this case, it's probably going to be Lilia. So now you have a board like this. And then you should be thinking, okay, well, I got out of 5 mages, now I have 4 mages. I get to slot out another mage for another frontline unit. So in this case, the next weakest link is going to be Heimerdinger. So you could slot out Heimerdinger for something like a Sona for more utility. And then let's say you find like a random Bard. Okay, Bard is an individually very strong unit, so who should I take out for Bard? I'll probably just take out either Illaoi or NAMI. So in this case, I'll just take out Illaoi, and only now are you able to slot out Rise for SHIN here, because now you're guaranteed to get SHIN to cast because of your front line. Notice how in this board, I'm still playing a random Sylas and a random Hecarim. It's okay because in the SHIN comp, all that matters is a good front line and SHIN. It doesn't matter what units you play. As long as SHIN lives, he'll eventually one-shot their team. And at this point, you can just go 9 and then fix your comp later. So let's say at level 8, you're rolling for SHIN and you end up not getting an SHIN at all. What do? Well, remember how I said that a lot of the skill in this comp is knowing what to do if you miss SHIN? Well, in this case, if you have a mage mid-game, you could either play 7 or 5 mages. So for example, if you don't hit the SHIN, you could potentially hit the Zoe. And this would probably stop the bleeding for a bit because 7 mage is actually pretty strong. And then once you start getting more legendary units, you want to slowly slot out your useless units. So in this case, you want to drop Vladimir and Lilia for higher value units. So let's say you find a Bard and a Sona, and then you're just going to be playing this board and try not to bleed out. So here's another example of a mid-game board you could use to get to SHIN. I'm not going to go through the same exercises as before. I'm pretty sure you guys already get the concept, but this board would be the backup board if you don't hit SHIN. You would just play around Shioyu and 6 Jade and have Anivia hold your SHIN items and then play for top 4. But if you do hit it, then you just transition out your units one by one into SHIN like I told you before. Here's a third board that you could use. This is a shapeshifter mid-game board, and in this case, you're using Swain to hold your items. Notice that Swain is currently holding Gwynsu's and Archangels. The cool thing about set 7 is that you're basically guaranteed best in slot for the carry you're going to use late game because you could re-roll your items at the dragon round. So although I don't have my Shojin yet, I'm fairly confident that I could get the Shojin after I re-roll a few times. So next up are going to be the AZ boards. Luckily, the AZ comms are a lot easier to play than SHIN. You just build any combination of these items, and you actually have a lot of options to flex into different comps. There's Xayah, there's CORKI, and you could even flex into Bruisers or just a late game YASUO board. So for the Xayah comp, the main synergies are really just going to be 3 Rage Wing and 2 Swift Shot. If you only have 3 Rage Wing, you usually need the Gwynsu's, but if you manage to find Shyvana for 6, then you actually don't need the Gwynsu's. You could actually just go 3 DPS items. And regarding the Xayah comp, it's very, very flexible. All 4 of the other units, you could just put in tank or utility units. So a sample board could end up looking like this. This is what happens if you find Shyvana. You could play 6 Rage Wing, and then your second Swift Shot could be EZREAL to get Tempest because you're also running Ornn. Let's say you don't find the Shyvana, then you could just tech in whatever frontline units you get. So for example, you could even play 4 Bruiser if you'd like, so OLAF and Illaoi. And then for utility units, you could just play Bard. And then this looks pretty good. Alternatively, since you're running Swain, you could also run Nico if you don't find Shyvana. This gives you 2 Shapeshifter, and Nico is one of the best solo frontline units in the game. In this case, you would just drop 2 frontline, Nico goes in, and then you just play another utility unit like Sona. So for CORKI, it's actually pretty simple as well. The only decision I think you have to make is to choose between Tristana or Jinx. Ideally, I think you would play Tristana if you built up the NAMI since early game. Otherwise, you might just want to play Jinx for the Revel bonus. And then the other core unit is just going to be Sona because she's both a Revel and an Evoker. Just like Xayah, the other 4 units are flex. You just want to fill them with tank and utility units. So a sample level 8 board could probably look like this. Any frontline works, even a random 2-star dragon like Itis. This could be a Shyvana, this could be Siphon. And then other units could just be random high value units like YASUO and Bard. I believe that the best in slot items for CORKI is probably Last Twister +2. So if you have a lot of AZ items and you happen to find a Siphon mid-game, you might want to consider playing around Bruisers. In this case, a very good mid-game board with Siphon is just going to be 6 Bruisers, and then you would stack your Siphon with your attack speed and AZ items. I believe best in slot is Gwynsu's BT +1, but I'm sure Siphon is super flexible. I think he works with both tank and damage items. But eventually, late game, you want to get out of Bruisers very slowly. So I would add in 2 Assassins. Qiyana would give you Tempest, and then you could throw in a random Bard. And then eventually, you want to play into 4 Sins with Pyke as well. Another variation to this is to play 6 Whispers. In this case, you could play Silas and Thresh, but then you would end up having to drop the Ornn and the Bard. In this case, not only would you itemize Siphon, but you would also probably want to itemize your Talon and your Pyke as well. Finally, the last comp that could technically use these AD items as well is just a YASUO flex board. You could play this board when you get to level 8 and you have a lot of money and you're very healthy. In those cases, you could usually just fast 9 and be healthy enough to hit all of these units. You would just itemize your YASUO, tank items on Shyvana, and then play all the legendary units, doesn't matter which one, and then eventually you'll win out. YASUO also does really well with blue buff or tank items as well. So if you have another secondary carry like Xayah, you could also put your AD items on Xayah, and then itemize all your tank items on YASUO. So finally, I'm going to talk about the reroll comps. In my opinion, there's 4 main reroll comps you should watch out for in the current meta. It's going to be EZREAL, SETT, NAMI, and OLAF. For EZREAL, you want to play reroll EZREAL if you haven't put any EXP into leveling up yet, and you find a lot of Leonas, Tariks, Karmas, and EZREALs early, and you have a lot of AP and mana items. So what you generally want to do when you want to play these 1-star reroll comps is you just want to save your gold until you're level 4, 8 out of 10 EXP. It's better if you commit to a 5 lose streak until the Krug round so that you can maximize your gold income. And then once you're at 8 out of 10 EXP, you generally want to hyper roll down to about 30 gold. If you're very close to hitting all your 3 stars, you could consider digging a bit deeper to hit them. But otherwise, generally, I like to stay above 30 gold and then slow roll when I'm level 5 to hit the remaining units. I would say that the priority for 3-starring your units is probably going to be EZREAL over Leona over Tarik over Karma. If you don't hit Karma, it's fine. Just prioritize on these 3. And then after you hit them, you could just push levels. And then at level 8, your board might look something like this. You just throw in and Ashe, Lee Sin, and a Shioyu. You want to stack all your tank items on whoever you 3-star, Taric or Leona, but preferably Leona. And you want to stack all your AP items on your Ezreal. Some good items for Ezreal, it's probably just Archangels +2. You could put Static Shiv, you could put Blue Buff, Hodge, Giant Slayer. The rest of his items are pretty flexible. So next up is going to be reroll sets. You want to play reroll set when you get a lot of sets and Sennas early. Since we're rerolling for 1-cost units, it's just going to be the exact same game plan as Ezreal. You want to save your gold until level 4, 8 out of 10 EXP, and then you roll down to 30 gold. And the priority for this is just going to be set. It doesn't really matter too much if you don't hit the Senna. Set is just going to be your main carry. And at level 8, your board is probably going to look something like this, 9 Ragewing. If you don't hit the Shyvana, you can just play 2 other utility units. And best in slot set is going to be QSS, Gwynsu's +1. The one is going to be either Giant Slayer or Titans. So next up is going to be reroll Nami. You want to reroll for Nami if you have a mage opener, and at stage 3-2 you have a lot of natural Namis. In that case, if no one else is playing Nami, you might want to consider rolling down to 2-star your board and seeing how many Namis you get. And if you get a lot, then you could consider committing to 3-star Nami on another roll down. Best in slot Nami is going to be Shojin, Archangels +1. Additionally, instead of 5 mages, another variation is to also play Lulu and Heimerdinger. This lets you build up your Namzi. And for late game, your board might eventually look like this. You could play 5 mages with Zoe. You could also play 7 mages. But if you're playing 5 mages, then you want to just tech in 2 more utility units like Bard and Sona. If you get a Mage Spat, some very good users of Mage Spat are going to be Asol and Sona. And in that case, it also enables you to play 7 mages a lot more easily. Last but not least, it's going to be the reroll OLAF and Xayah comp. You generally want to look towards playing OLAF if you get an Assassin Spat. I believe he's currently the best user of the Sin Spat, simply due to how his level 7 board plays out. You could also consider playing reroll Olaf if you get an Olaf at stage 1. At that point, you could start farming 5 AD per turn by making him die each round. Best in slot Olaf is probably Sin Spat, Runans, and BT, and then Xayah is just going to be the typical assassin items, so IE, Spark, Hodge. And then eventually you want to get out of your useless units and then play 4 assassins instead. In this case, you could probably tech in Qiyana and Pyke. Qiyana gives Tempest if you play Ornn for 2 Bruiser. And then Pyke is just individually a very good assassin. So this concludes my thoughts on the current meta. When the meta is updated again, I'll probably release another one of these videos. So if you want to stay updated on what the current meta is, make sure to subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and comment down below, and I will see you guys next time.